What is up, everybody? VitalSyntax here, and this is going to be another Battlefield 3 versus Modern Warfare 3 comparison video. A couple months ago I did a similar video where I compared these two huge titles, but back then there really wasn't that much information regarding either or. But now that we got to play the Battlefield 3 beta, we also got to see tons of gameplay, and even some people got to play Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 at the Call of Duty XP event. I wanted to redo this video and put these two games side by side and compare them in a couple different categories, from graphics, audio, variety, content, and style. Now these obviously are my own personal opinions, everybody's entitled to their own, but seeing as these two huge games are coming out roughly around the same time, both in time for the 2011 holiday season, and I know some of my viewers maybe won't be picking both of these games up and are going to have to decide between one or the other. Hopefully this video will help you decide which one is better for you, and ultimately what it comes down to is what your preferences for gameplay styles. Yeah, there sure are some technical differences, and I'll get into those as well, but really what it comes down to is both of these games are different, they play different, they feel different, and it's hard to compare them. And I see a lot of people saying that you shouldn't compare them at all, but I actually think they should be compared, because they're both first-person shooters coming out around the same time, and some people have to make the decision to buy one or the other. So the first category we're going to be discussing is graphics. Graphics includes things from lighting effects, textures, animations, the way guns look, character models, vehicles, even map design. And one of the biggest advancements that Battlefield 3 has made with this new Frostbite 2 engine is lighting effects. They have this huge dynamic lighting engine that is not degraded even on the consoles. Sure, the console, it doesn't look quite as good as the PC version because of not having a full HD resolution, not having as high of textures, things like that, but the overall lighting effects actually haven't been downgraded for the console version. And same on the PC, if you're playing on the ultra settings versus the low settings, those lighting effects are still there. So this is a really cool advancement that they've implemented with Battlefield 3 and the Frostbite 2 engine, and it's something that sets this game apart by a long shot. One of the things I noticed when looking at Battlefield 3 versus Modern Warfare 3 gameplay is Modern Warfare 3 looks very bland, it looks very dull, it doesn't seem to pop, and it doesn't seem to look realistic or authentic. And that's partly because of lighting effects, things like light bulbs and lighting that's in rooms, or even natural light like the sun or the moon or things like that. And also with like when you shoot a gun, you have the muzzle flash, explosives, all that comes together and makes a very realistic looking lighting effects on Battlefield 3. So in comparison, Battlefield 3 has much better lighting. Moving on to textures. Textures is kind of a rough situation because since both of these games are going to be huge on the consoles, and that's where the majority of people are going to be purchasing this game, the textures are very similar because of the limits of the hardware. Now for Battlefield 3, they did announce there's going to be an HD resolution option for Xbox and PS3. Basically this means that you install files onto your hard drive instead of streaming those images or those textures from a disk. You're actually streaming them from a hard drive. This allows you to have access to much higher resolution textures that normally would only be available on a larger disk like a Blu-ray, or if you're reading it directly from a hard drive like if you're playing on the PC. So textures on the consoles is kind of hard to compare. They're really not that much of a difference. But if you look over at the PC side of things, from what we've seen, we haven't seen very much PC Modern Warfare 3 footage, but the Battlefield 3 textures on PC are just very well done. They go up very high and they scale very well. Moving on to the next section, this is animation. This is another thing that's similar to lighting in the sense that it's not degraded across multiple platforms. So the animations that you get on the PC are the same animations you're going to get on the consoles. And this is another huge improvement that Battlefield 3 has made with the Frostbite 2 engine. They've implemented these very advanced animation systems that they actually took from FIFA, which is a soccer game also published by EA. So these dynamic animations allow different animations to mix together without them looking awkward or strange. And although the animations for Call of Duty in the past, and with what we've seen in the trailers and stuff, are very well done, I think that the Battlefield 3 animations have kind of a step up just because of this new ant system they've implemented, which allow cross-fading between different animations and things like that. But also it kind of comes down to personal preference. Things like reload animations, things like pulling levers and opening doors and things like that are all kind of unique to each game, and you can't really say one is better than the other. So next, moving on to models, this is another area that you can't really say one is better than the other. It's kind of about personal preference. But one thing that I did notice about Modern Warfare 3 is there's a lot of copying and pasting. If you look at Modern Warfare 2, Infinity Ward's previous Call of Duty title, you can see a lot of the same guns were actually just copied and pasted to Modern Warfare 3. Yeah, they've been tweaked a tad bit. They might have changed the rail system. They might have changed, a couple little things here and there, the way the iron sights look and whatnot. But I noticed at least 6 or 7 guns that were direct copy and pastes from Modern Warfare 2. Now, this isn't necessarily a terrible thing. I mean, if you look back at Bad Company 1 and then Bad Company 2, they were basically the exact same thing. As far as guns, they were copied and pasted, which is sometimes okay, but with Battlefield 3, they have a whole new array of guns, a whole new array of gun models, sound effects, skins for these guns. So I think that Battlefield 3 kind of leaps ahead of Modern Warfare 3 as far as the way guns and things like that look, because they've implemented a whole new system completely different than what we've seen in the past. Alright, so moving on to the next category, but before I do that, just to wrap up graphics, I think everybody would agree that Battlefield 3 is a much more beautiful game than Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, partly because of the game engine they're running on. Modern Warfare 2 has been using the same game engine since Call of Duty 4, although it's been updated and iterated a couple times, there's no huge new advancements. I'm actually interested to see what Call of Duty is going to do in the future with the new ID5 engine that Rage ran on. Whereas Battlefield 3 has this whole new game engine called Frostbite 2 that allows for a huge, vast advancement in graphics. So moving on to audio, this is another huge area where Battlefield 3 just completely outdoes Modern Warfare 3. Everything from explosive sound effects, the way your guns sound when you fire. Voice acting is a huge thing, and voice acting is something that we won't really be able to judge until we've played the full game, because voice acting really has to do with the single player. And obviously, really nobody has got to play through the single player other than the developers. So we'll have to judge that once the game is actually out. But as far as gun sound effects, vehicle sound effects, explosives, things like that, Battlefield 3 has a very, very deep, bassy, rich, full sound effect that, to be honest, it's hard to tell the difference between that and real-life sound effects. Whereas a lot of the Modern Warfare 2 sound effects or Modern Warfare 3 sound effects are actually copied and pasted once again from previous Call of Duties, which was kind of strange to me. For example, the G36, the M4A1, both had a similar gun sound effect from previous Call of Duties, which is, to be honest, it was kind of strange to hear that same sound effect that I've been hearing since, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and they just had, moved to this new game engine or this new game. So Battlefield 3, especially with, there's an option you can turn on called War Tapes, and I know some people don't like to turn it on because they think it makes it sound less realistic, but I prefer to turn War Tapes on in the audio settings, and it actually makes things sound very realistic. For example, in Bad Company 2, if you set off a grenade inside of a building, you would hear actually the shrapnel bouncing off walls. It was just so immersive and so detailed, and I would actually argue that Battlefield in general, both Battlefield 3 and previous Battlefield games, have had some of the best sound effects in any game. Now, sound effects are kind of different. I would put them in a different category as soundtrack, music and things like that, and since we really haven't got to play the full game yet, we haven't heard the full soundtrack of Battlefield 3, although it is available on Amazon. You can listen to previews, you haven't actually listened to the whole thing, and same with Modern Warfare 3, we haven't heard the full soundtrack. Voice acting also, we'll have to wait till the full game comes out, so basically audio at this point we can only compare, sound effects and things like that, and Battlefield 3 just leaps ahead than Modern Warfare 3. Alright, so moving on to the next category is variety. So variety is everything from different play styles that you can use, different game modes that you can experience, how many maps are there, how many weapons are there, what's the range of variety that you have access to, because obviously you don't want to be doing the same thing over and over and being super repetitive. You want to be unlocking new content, you want to be playing on new maps, play on DLC when they release things like that. So basically, Battlefield 3 versus Modern Warfare 3, it comes down to variety. The first thing is game modes, and Battlefield 3 has a very limited number of game modes. It has Conquest, has Rush, has Squad Deathmatch, has Deathmatch, and it has Squad Rush. So that's about 6 different game modes. And some of those game modes are slightly similar. For example, squad deathmatch is similar to team deathmatch, and squad rush is similar to rush. But if you look at the fundamental game types, rush, team deathmatch, and conquest, they're very, very different. They play different. They require different play styles, different tactics, and they're not really similar in any way, shape, or form. Now, going over to Modern Warfare 3, we haven't gotten a list of all the confirmed game types, but just looking at previous Call of Duties, especially Modern Warfare 2, they've had a wide range of game modes. Everything from free-for-all, team deathmatch, search and destroy, demolition, domination, sabotage, capture the flag. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. They have this huge amount of playlists, and they even add playlists and things like DLC or just patch updates. So when it comes down to game modes, I got to give it to Modern Warfare 2. They do have a larger variety of actual physical game modes. Now, some of those game modes are quite similar. For example, demolition might be very similar to sabotage. But when it comes down to it, the options that the player has are a little bit more wide with Modern Warfare 3. So moving past game modes, the next thing is play styles. Different ways that you can play the game, and I think Battlefield 3 is very, very far ahead of Modern Warfare 3 in this area because of the class system. Now, the class system, or the kit system they have, you have the Recon, the Assault, which is also the Medic, the Support, which is also the Assault, you drop ammo, and the Engineer, and they're all very, very different. They have different pieces of equipment. You play them differently. You have different roles. For example, a Recon, you're doing mobile spawn point, you're providing long range support, you're spotting enemies, whereas a medic might be at the very front of the lines, reviving teammates, making sure their health is there. And then you got the engineer taking care of tanks, blowing up tanks, repairing tanks, or any other type of vehicle. So there's a huge variety with gameplay styles in Battlefield 3, whereas Modern Warfare 3, yeah, there's the perk system, but almost every Call of Duty in the past has had a set of overpowered perks that everybody uses. For example, Black Ops, you have Ghost, Sleight of Hand, and probably Ninja. Or Modern Warfare 2, you had Stopping Power. Modern Warfare 1, Call of Duty 4, you had Stopping Power as well. So there's usually a couple of perks that everybody sticks to, and if they actually do balance Modern Warfare 3 perfectly, and all the perks are completely viable options, which is never going to happen in my opinion, then there would be a large amount of variety in gameplay styles. But the ultimate gameplay elements in Battlefield 3 are very wide. There's tons of teamwork that goes into play, whereas Modern Warfare 3, and every Call of Duty in the past has been lone wolf, run and gun, and that's it. Okay, so the next one, variety, is maps. How many maps, how many different play areas are going to be available to the player? So this is kind of a misconception that I see some Modern Warfare 3 fans saying that Battlefield 3 doesn't have very many maps. They have a list of 9 maps that are going to be on retail, and that doesn't include the 4 that are also included in the Back to Carcassonne expansion pack that you get for free for pre-ordering. So technically, I guess there would be about 13 on release day. Modern Warfare 3, I think they said there's going to be 16 maps on release date, and there's going to be tons and tons of DLC. I mean, if you look at any Call of Duty in the past, they've had 4 or 5 map packs that each have 4 or 5 maps in them. So I think Call of Duty does have a larger number of maps, but those maps and the size of those maps is so tiny in comparison to these Battlefield maps. For example, Caspian Border, Operation Firestorm are 2 huge maps that we've seen gameplay footage from, and seriously, you could probably fit 15 to 20 Call of Duty maps into one of those Battlefield maps. So there's a way larger number that Call of Duty has, but the size of Battlefield maps, I think, kind of balances that out. And overall, to be honest, I think there's a larger variety in scenery and different locations that you can go to in Battlefield. I mean, some of the maps we've seen are things like playing on the Tehran Highway, where it's the nighttime close quarters combat infantry focus, where you've got the complete opposite with Operation Metro or Operation Firestorm or Caspian Border. Tanks, huge open areas, large massive vehicle warfare, and then on the exact opposite you've got something like Operation Metro, which is very tight, close quarters, long narrow passages, whereas Call of Duty usually has that same map design, where it's a circular map or square map One team spawns on one side, the other on the other side, and you just fight and meet in the middle over and over and over and over. Now, if you have a game mode like Team Deathmatch or Free For All, obviously the spawn points are separate, but most of the game modes like Search and Destroy, Sabotage, Demolition, Domination, all of those game modes you have set spawn points. And I'm not saying you don't have set spawn points in Battlefield. It's just that the way the game plays out is almost always the same in Call of Duty because of the size of the maps. So I got to hand it to Variety, back to Battlefield as well. And moving on to the next one. This is the second to last one. I know this video is dragging on quite a bit, but there's a lot of stuff I had to cover. So next one is content. How much play time are you going to get out of the game? How many options are there for actually playing the game? So this includes everything from single player, cooperative, or co-op to multiplayer. How many maps are there? I already discussed that. How many guns? What type of DLC can we expect in the future? That's all included into this content section. So both games have single player. Battlefield 3 is really pushing their limits for single player. They have had single player with the Bad Company series, and I actually really like the single player in those games, but some people, including Battlefield themselves or DICE themselves, have said that the Battlefield single player hasn't been up to par with what they would expect out of a Battlefield game. The multiplayer is really where it's been at. And they haven't really had a co-op in Battlefield. They did have a couple options in previous Battlefields, like Bad Company 2, they had the Onslaught mode. I think there was a couple other ones in like 1943 and 1942 and things like that. Or 2142. Any of those Battlefield games, I'm pretty sure there were a couple of co-op options, but they really haven't had a solid foundation in co-op. It's mostly been multiplayer. Now with Battlefield 3, they're not really going leaps and leaps ahead with co-op. They do have an option where you can play through some unique single-player missions. They're not actually copied and pasted from the campaign that you'd play by yourself, but they're similar in style to a single-player mission, but you're doing it with one other friend. Now, in comparison, Modern Warfare 3 also has this new Spec Op mode. Now, they do have two different types of Spec Op missions. You have the survival missions and you have the Spec Op missions. Spec Op missions are similar to what we saw in Modern Warfare 2, where you're trying to beat the clock, you're trying to beat this high score. You can do it with one other friend, and they're pretty fun, and you get stars, you can unlock different tiers and unlock different levels and things like that. And on top of that, you're also going to have the survival mode, which survival mode is going to take place on every single one of the multiplayer maps. And you're going to have to fight off waves and waves of enemies, similar to zombies, except instead of fighting a dead rotting corpse that's trying to suck your blood or eat your flesh, instead you're trying to take out like enemy dogs or juggernauts or just normal infantry soldiers. So that's cooperative. Multiplayer, this is debatable. The content that we see in Battlefield 3 and Call of Duty are both very, very large. You can play hundreds and hundreds of hours into both of the multiplayers. I'm not going to say one has more content than the other because they both have a huge variety of unlock trees, different maps, and just a very large multiplayer in general. So I'm not going to compare those two. They're about the same. Single player, about the same. Cooperative, about the same. Maps, I would say Battlefield has a little bit more variety just because of the size. Guns, there's a huge list of guns for both games, and the DLC, it's kind of hard to predict in the future what Battlefield 3 is going to offer, but from what we've seen with Call of Duty Elite, there is going to be a lot of DLC for Modern Warfare 3. So as a whole, in the content section, I'm going to say both these games are very close, and I'm going to say it's a tie. Alright, so this last category is style, and this is a personal preference, I think, is really what it comes down to. And ultimately, I think if you're deciding between both of these games, it's about personal preference. So the first thing in style is teamwork, and how do you play it tactically, or is it run and gun lone wolf type of thing? And this is something I also talked about in Variety. But Battlefield 3 has this huge element of teamwork, everything from communicating with your teammates over a VoIP connection via voice over IP, to being able to spot enemies, call out their location, give your teammates ammo, give your teammates health, revive them. All of those things come into teamwork, and you're obviously in a squad, very more intimate than just a team of like 8 people, as you would probably have in Call of Duty. And on the opposite side, Battlefield or Call of Duty is very focused on lone wolf run and gun gameplay. And then as far as tactical and strategy goes, Call of Duty is once again very run and gun. You're just kind of always going for the objective. if you are going for the objective. If you're not and you're just going for kills, your kill death ratio is very important. Whereas Battlefield 3, tactical and the way you play the game tactically is very, very important. I mean, if you use a tank, you can use a helicopter, a jet. Are you going to flank the enemy? The maps are so huge. You can go from tons of different routes. There's a lot more tools at your disposal to play tactically. So as a whole, I think style in the sense of teamwork and tactical definitely goes to Battlefield 3. And basically that wraps up the whole thing. Graphics, Battlefield 3 is far superior. Audio, Battlefield 3 is far superior. Variety, debatable. Content, debatable. Style, debatable. So I'm basically going to say, in my opinion, Battlefield 3 is a far superior game. I'm not saying I'm not going to pick up Call of Duty. There will be Call of Duty content on my channel. I will be playing Call of Duty once it's released. But if you're somebody out there that's looking to purchase one of these games, either or, what I suggest you do is play one of the previous games. Either play Bad Company 2 or Battlefield 2, and then play Modern Warfare 2 or Black Ops, and whichever one you have more fun with. And that's really what it comes down to. It's a game. It's about having fun. Whichever one you have more fun with, that's the one you should get. Alright, thanks again for watching, guys. If you guys enjoyed the video, remember to leave a rating, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.